He thought he was hiding her. She knew she was testing him. He thought he was hiding her. She knew she was testing him. The rifle barrel pressed cold against Jake's spine before he even heard the footsteps. He froze mid-reach for the coffee pot, hand hovering in the air like a fool. The woman's voice came low and steady from behind him. "Keep your hands where I can see them, cowboy. No sudden moves unless you want a new hole in your back." Jake raised both hands slowly, turning his head just enough to catch her reflection in the window glass. Red hair tied back, dust covering her riding clothes, and eyes that looked like they hadn't slept in days. She was young, maybe 25, but the way she held that Winchester told him she knew exactly how to use it. "I'm not looking for trouble, ma'am," he said, keeping his voice calm. "Just making morning coffee in my own cabin." She circled around him, keeping the rifle trained on his chest. Her boots scraped against the wooden floor, each step deliberate and measured. "Your cabin sits on the only trail through these mountains for 50 miles. That makes it my problem." She glanced toward the door, then back at him. "Anyone else here?" Jake shook his head. "Just me and a horse in the barn. Been that way for 3 years now." The woman studied his face, looking for lies. Her finger stayed on the trigger, but something in her posture shifted slightly. "I need a place to stay. Just for tonight. Maybe 2 nights. You tell anyone I'm here, you die first." "Understand?" Jake nodded slowly. "I understand, but I got a right to know who's threatening to shoot me in my own home." She lowered the rifle an inch, though her grip stayed firm. "Name's Kate Sullivan. That's all you need to know. The rest doesn't concern you." Jake gestured toward the coffee pot with his chin. Can I finish making that coffee now, or are we going to stand here all morning?" Kate considered this, then stepped back, giving him room but keeping the Winchester ready. "Go ahead. But keep those hands where I can see them." Jake poured water into the pot and set it on the stove, moving slow and deliberate. Through the window, he could see the empty trail winding down the mountain. No dust clouds, no riders. Whatever Kate was running from hadn't caught up yet. "How long have they been chasing you?" he asked without turning around. Kate's silence lasted so long he thought she wouldn't answer. 4 days, maybe 5. Lost track after the second night. He spooned coffee grounds into the pot, the familiar ritual steadying his nerves. "How many?" 3 men, she said. "All good riders. Better shots. They work for a man named Carson Blake. Runs most of the territory from here to the border." Jake had heard the name before. Blake owned half the ranches in 3 counties and had his fingers in every crooked deal from cattle rustling to land fraud. Dangerous man to cross. "What did you do to get on his bad side?" Kate moved to the window, checking the trail while keeping Jake in her peripheral vision. "I didn't do anything. My brother did. He stole something from Blake, something worth killing for. Now my brother's dead and they think I know where he hid it." The morning sun caught her face, highlighting the bruise along her jaw and the cut above her eyebrow. "Do you?" Jake asked. "Know where it is?" She turned back to him, and for the first time he saw something other than desperation in her eyes. "Maybe. Maybe not. That's between me and Blake's men when they finally catch up." The coffee started to boil, filling the cabin with its bitter smell. Jake poured 2 cups and slid one across the table toward her. She hesitated, then propped the rifle against the wall within easy reach and took the cup. Her hands shook slightly as she brought it to her lips. They sat in silence for a moment, the only sound the crackling of the fire in the stove. Jake studied her over the rim of his cup. She was exhausted, running on nothing but fear and stubbornness. But there was something else there, too, something he couldn't quite place. A calculation behind those tired eyes. "You planning to fight them when they come?" he asked. "Or keep running?" Kate set down her cup and met his gaze directly. "Depends on whether you help me or not." Jake felt the weight of those words settle over the cabin. He'd come up here 3 years ago to get away from other people's problems, to live quiet and unbothered. Now trouble had walked through his door with a Winchester and red hair. "Why would I help you? I don't even know you." "Because if you don't," she said, "they'll kill you anyway. Once they find out I was here, you become a loose end. Carson Blake doesn't leave loose ends." She leaned forward, her voice dropping lower. "But if you help me, we might both walk away from this alive. Might even come out ahead if things go right." Jake wanted to argue, wanted to tell her to take her trouble and keep moving, but he looked at her bruised face and shaking hands and knew she was telling the truth. He was already involved whether he wanted to be or not. "All right," Jake said finally. "Tell me what your brother stole." Kate pulled a folded piece of paper from inside her jacket and laid it on the table between them. It was a map, hand-drawn but detailed, showing mineral deposits throughout the mountain range. Gold, silver, copper. Enough to make a dozen men rich beyond imagining. My brother worked as Blake's surveyor for 2 years. He found these deposits and Blake paid him pennies while planning to claim it all for himself. So Danny copied the map and tried to sell it to Blake's competitors. Jake studied the map, tracing the marked locations with his finger. This is worth killing for, no question. But why are they chasing you if your brother already had the map? Kate folded the paper and tucked it back in her jacket. Because this isn't the real map. Danny was smart enough to know Blake would come after him. He made 3 copies, all slightly different. This one has just enough truth mixed with lies to keep Blake guessing. The real map is hidden somewhere safe.
Where? Jake asked.
Kate smiled, but there was no warmth in it. That's what I'm testing you to find out, cowboy. Whether you're the kind of man who can be trusted or the kind who'd sell me out for a cut of Blake's money. Jake felt a chill run through him that had nothing to do with the morning air. You're using me as bait, she shrugged. I'm using you as a test. There's a difference. If Blake's men show up and you keep your mouth shut, I know you're solid. If you crack under pressure, well, then I know that too. Jake pushed back from the table, anger flaring in his chest. You could have told me that before I agreed to help. Kate stood too, her hand moving casually toward the Winchester. Would you have agreed if I had? They stared at each other across the table, the tension thick enough to cut. Finally, Jake sat back down. How long until they get here? Kate checked the window again. Could be hours. Could be minutes. They're good trackers, but I covered my trail pretty well. Still, they'll check every cabin, every cave, every place someone could hide between here and the border. Jake thought fast, his mind racing through possibilities. We need to make this place look normal. If they see signs of 2 people, they'll know something's wrong. Kate nodded. Already thought of that. I'll hide in the root cellar under the kitchen floor. You go about your day like nothing's different, chop wood, tend your horse, whatever you normally do. If they come, you tell them you haven't seen anyone. Jake stood and walked to the kitchen, pulling up the rug to reveal the trap door. How do I know you won't just shoot me from down there if things go bad? Kate picked up her rifle and moved toward the cellar. Because then you'd fall right on top of the trap door and they'd know someone else was here. I need you alive and cooperative, at least for now. She climbed down into the darkness, and Jake could hear her settling in among the stored potatoes and preserves. Close it up, she called from below. And Cowboy? Try not to get us both killed. Jake lowered the trapdoor and replaced the rug, smoothing it out until no one would notice anything unusual. He stepped outside into the cool mountain air, forcing himself to breathe normally. The sun was climbing higher now, burning off the morning mist. Jake grabbed his axe from the shed and started splitting logs, falling into the rhythm of work. Each swing helped calm his nerves, helped him think. Kate was smart, he'd give her that. Smart and dangerous. But she was also desperate, and desperate people made mistakes. He needed to be ready for whatever came next. An hour passed, then 2. Jake stacked the split wood and moved on to checking the fence line around his small corral. His horse, a bay gelding named Rusty, watched him with curious eyes. The animal sensed his tension, shifting and snorting nervously. Easy boy, Jake murmured, running a hand along the horse's neck. Just a strange morning, that's all. He filled the water trough and scattered some grain, maintaining the appearance of a normal day. The riders appeared just after noon, 3 dark shapes moving up the trail. Jake's heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his movement steady as he worked on mending a section of fence. He didn't look up until they were almost at his gate, didn't acknowledge them until the lead rider called out. Jake forced himself to turn slowly, shading his eyes against the sun. Help you gentlemen with something? The lead rider was tall and lean, with a scar running down his left cheek. His companions flanked him on either side, hands resting easy on their holsters. We're looking for a woman, the scarred man said. Red hair, about this tall. He held his hand at shoulder height. Riding a gray mare. You seen anyone like that pass through here? Jake shook his head, leaning on the fence post. Haven't seen anyone in weeks. Trail doesn't get much traffic this time of year. The scarred man's eyes narrowed. Mind if we look around? Your cabin's the only shelter for miles. If she came this way, she might have stopped. Jake kept his expression neutral, even as his pulse raced. Help yourself. Ain't got nothing to hide. The 3 men dismounted, and Jake's hand tightened on the fence post. This was it. The moment Kate had been waiting for. The moment that would determine whether he lived or died. The men split up, one checking the barn while the other 2 approached the cabin. Jake followed at a distance, not too close, but close enough to see what they were doing. The scarred man pushed open the cabin door and stepped inside, his hand on his pistol. Jake could hear him moving around, opening cupboards, checking under the bed. His heart pounded so hard he thought they might hear it. The rug over the cellar door looked undisturbed, natural. Kate had been right about that much, at least. After what felt like an eternity, the scarred man emerged from the cabin. His expression was frustrated but not suspicious. "She's not here." The other two returned from the barn and the surrounding area, shaking their heads. "No sign of her, boss. No gray mare either." The scarred man studied Jake for a long moment. "You sure you haven't seen anything unusual? Tracks, maybe? Signs of someone camping nearby?" Jake met his gaze steadily. "Nothing. Like I said, it's been quiet up here." The men mounted their horses, but the scarred man paused before leaving. "If you do see her, there's $500 for information leading to her capture. Carson Blake pays well for loyalty." Jake nodded. "I'll keep that in mind." The riders turned and headed back down the trail, their figures gradually shrinking into the distance. Jake waited until they were completely out of sight before releasing the breath he'd been holding. He walked back to the cabin on shaking legs and pulled up the rug. Kate emerged from the cellar, dust in her hair and a strange smile on her face. "Well," she said, climbing out. "Looks like you passed the test, cowboy." Jake grabbed her arm, harder than he intended. "Don't ever use me like that again. I could have gotten killed for your little experiment." Kate pulled free, her smile fading. "You were going to get killed anyway the moment they found out I'd been here. At least this way you proved yourself useful." She brushed dust from her clothes and walked to the window. "They'll be back, you know. Once they realize I didn't take any of the other trails, they'll circle around and check here again." "How long do we have?" Jake asked, still angry but forced to focus on survival. Kate studied the trail. "Maybe a day, maybe less if they're smart. We need to move tonight, head deeper into the mountains where they can't follow on horseback." Jake shook his head. "Those mountains will kill you faster than Blake's men. No trails, no shelter, and a storm coming in from the west. I can smell it in the air." Kate turned to face him. "Then we make them think we went that way while we actually double back toward town." "That's suicide," Jake said. "They'll have men watching every approach to town." Kate's eyes glinted with something dangerous. "Not if we don't look like ourselves. Not if we look like just another rancher and his wife heading to market." Jake felt his stomach drop. "You want to hide in plain sight?" "That's the last thing they'd expect," Kate said. "Everyone runs away from danger. Nobody runs toward it." She pulled out the fake map again and laid it on the table. "Plus, I need to get to town anyway. The real map is hidden there, and I need to retrieve it before Blake figures out this one's worthless." "Where in town?" Jake asked. Kate hesitated, and he saw the calculation in her eyes again. She was deciding how much to trust him. Finally, she spoke. "The church. My brother hid it in the old church on the edge of town, the one they stopped using 5 years ago. There's a loose stone behind the altar, third from the left on the bottom row. That's where the real map is." Jake thought about the abandoned church, sitting alone on a hill overlooking the town. Smart place to hide something. Nobody goes there anymore except kids looking for a thrill. "We'll need supplies," Jake said, his mind already working through the logistics. "Different clothes for both of us, a wagon instead of horses, maybe some goods to sell so we look legitimate." Kate nodded. "There's a trunk in my brother's old room at the boarding house. Had clothes that might fit you, make you look more like a merchant than a mountain man. And I've got a dress stashed there, too, something respectable." Jake studied her. "You've been planning this for a while." Kate met his gaze without flinching. "Since the moment my brother got himself killed. I knew Blake would come after me, knew I'd need help, knew I'd have to test anyone who offered it before I could trust them." She paused. "You did good today, Jake. Better than I expected." Most men would have cracked when that scarred man started asking questions. Jake felt some of his anger fade. "Who is he? The scarred man?" "His name's Carl Brennan," Kate said. "Blake's best tracker and his most loyal killer. He's hunted men across 3 territories and never lost a trail. If he's leading the search, Blake wants me bad. Real bad." She moved away from the window and sat down heavily in a chair. "My brother thought he could outsmart Blake. Thought he could sell that map and disappear before anyone knew what happened. Instead, Blake's men caught up to him outside of Copper Creek, shot him in the back and left him in the street like a dog." "I'm sorry," Jake said, and meant it. Kate's expression hardened. "Don't be sorry. Be ready. Because when we get to that church and retrieve the real map, we're not running anymore. We're taking the fight to Blake." Jake felt ice in his veins. "That's not what I signed up for. I said I'd help you hide, not help you start a war." Kate leaned forward. "You think Blake's going to forget about you? You think Brennan didn't notice how calm you were, how you didn't flinch when they searched your place?" "He's smart enough to wonder about that. You're in this now whether you like it or not." Jake wanted to argue, wanted to throw her out and take his chances alone. But she was right. He'd seen it in Brennan's eyes before they left, that calculating look of a man filing away details for later. "What's your plan?" he asked finally. Kate pulled out a second piece of paper, this one showing a rough sketch of Blake's ranch. "We give him the fake map first. Let him waste time and money digging up empty mountainsides. While he's distracted, we go to the territorial governor with the real map and evidence of Blake's land fraud. The governor's been looking for a reason to bring Blake down for years." "That's assuming the governor's not in Blake's pocket, too," Jake said. Kate smiled grimly. "He's not. I know because my brother tried to bribe him and got thrown out of his office. The governor's honest, which makes him rare out here but also makes him our best shot. We get him the real map, we get him proof of Blake's crimes, and Blake goes to prison. Maybe hangs if we're lucky." Jake rubbed his face, exhaustion and stress catching up to him. "And if this doesn't work, if Blake gets to us first?" "Then we die," Kate said simply. "But at least we die fighting instead of running. At least we make him pay a price for killing my brother." She stood and walked to the door looking out at the mountains. "I'm not asking you to be a hero, Jake. I'm asking you to help me survive long enough to get justice. If you can't do that, tell me now and I'll move on. Leave you out of it." Jake thought about his quiet life, his peaceful cabin, the 3 years he'd spent avoiding exactly this kind of trouble. Then he thought about Brennan's cold eyes and Blake's reputation for tying up loose ends. Kate was right, he was already in this. Might as well see it through. "All right," he said. "We do this your way, but I've got one condition." Kate turned back to him. "What's that?" "If we survive this, you tell me the real reason you're doing this. Because it's not just about justice for your brother. There's something else driving you." Kate's expression flickered, just for a moment, showing something vulnerable beneath the hard exterior. "When this is over," she said quietly. "If we're both still alive, I'll tell you everything." "Fair enough," Jake said. They spent the rest of the afternoon preparing. Jake gathered supplies while Kate cleaned her weapons and checked her ammunition. As the sun began to set, painting the mountains in shades of orange and red, they heard horses approaching again. Jake's hand went to his rifle, but Kate shook her head. "Just one rider this time, coming slow." They watched through the window as a lone figure approached the cabin. It wasn't one of Blake's men. It was a young boy, maybe 14, riding a tired horse. The boy dismounted and walked to the door, knocking hesitantly. Jake opened it, keeping his body between the boy and Kate. "Help you, son?" The boy held out a folded piece of paper. "Got a message for Jake Rollins. A man in town paid me $2 to ride it up here. Said it was urgent." Jake took the paper, his stomach tightening. "Who gave you this?" The boy shrugged, didn't give a name. Just said to deliver it before sundown and not to wait for a reply. He climbed back on his horse and rode off before Jake could ask anything else. Kate moved beside him as he unfolded the paper. The message was short and written in a clean, educated hand. "Jake, we know she's with you. We know what she's after. If you bring her to the old mill by midnight tonight, you walk away with $10,000 in your life. If you don't, you both die. Choose wisely." The note wasn't signed, but it didn't need to be. Kate read over his shoulder, her face pale. "They know." Jake crumpled the note. "They're guessing. If they knew for sure, they'd be here already with guns drawn. This is pressure, trying to make us panic and make mistakes." Kate looked at him with new respect. "You're smarter than you look, cowboy." Jake managed a tight smile. "I've been underestimated before. Usually works in my favor." He walked to the fireplace and threw the note into the flames. "We stick to the plan. We leave tonight, get to town, get that map, and take it to the governor." Kate nodded, but Jake could see the fear in her eyes now, the reality of how close Blake's net was drawing around them. "Time to see if your test was worth it," Jake said. "Time to see if we're both as smart as we think we are." They waited until full dark before moving. Jake hitched his wagon and covered the bed with canvas, creating a space underneath where Kate could hide if needed. He'd changed into his better clothes, a worn but clean shirt and vest that made him look more respectable. Kate wore a simple dress she'd had in her saddlebag, her red hair pinned up under a bonnet. The transformation was remarkable. She looked like any rancher's wife heading to town for supplies. The trail down the mountain was treacherous in the dark, but Jake knew every turn and switchback by heart. The wagon wheels creaked and groaned as they descended, the only sound besides the occasional hoot of an owl or rustle of wind through the pines. Kate sat rigid beside him, her hand inside a fold of her dress where she'd hidden a pistol. Every shadow made her tense. Every sound brought her hand closer to the weapon. About halfway down, Jake pulled the wagon to a stop. Kate's hand went to her pistol. "What is it?" Jake pointed to a spot about 50 yards ahead where the trail narrowed between two large boulders. Perfect place for an ambush. If Blake's men are smart, that's where they'd wait. Kate studied the terrain. Can we go around? Not with the wagon, Jake said, but there's a deer trail that runs parallel about 100 yards to the east. We can lead the horse through there and come out below the narrows. They abandoned the wagon, taking only what they could carry. Jake led his horse through the darkness, following a path he'd walked dozens of times while hunting. Kate moved behind him, surprisingly quiet for someone in a dress and city boots. The night air grew colder as they descended, their breath forming small clouds in the moonlight. They were almost past the narrow section when Jake heard voices ahead. He held up a hand, stopping Kate in her tracks. 2 men stood near where the deer trail rejoined the main road, their cigarettes glowing red in the darkness. Jake couldn't make out their words, but he recognized the posture of men on guard duty. Blake had indeed set a trap. Kate moved up beside him, her mouth close to his ear. How many? 2 that I can see, Jake whispered back. Could be more in the rocks. We need to draw them away from the trail. Kate thought for a moment, then started unbuttoning her dress. Jake's eyes widened. What are you doing? Creating a distraction, she said, pulling the dress down to expose her shoulders and messing up her carefully pinned hair. You're going to think I'm crazy, but trust me. She handed him her pistol and stepped out onto the trail before he could stop her, stumbling and calling out in a frightened voice. Help! Please help me! Somebody help! The 2 guards spun around, hands going to their weapons. Kate staggered toward them, sobbing. My husband, she cried. We were attacked on the trail. They took everything. Please, you have to help him. The guards exchanged glances, lowering their guns slightly. Where's your husband, ma'am? One of them asked. Kate pointed back up the trail, away from where Jake was hidden. Up there, maybe half a mile. He's hurt bad. Please, I need help. The guards hesitated, clearly torn between their orders and the sight of a distressed woman. Finally, one of them nodded. Charlie, you stay here and keep watch. I'll go check on her husband, the other guard protested. Brennan said nobody gets past us. This could be a trick. The first guard looked at Kate's tear-streaked face and disheveled appearance. Look at her. She's terrified and half-dressed. What kind of trick is that?
He turned to Kate.
Show me where he is, ma'am. As the guard followed Kate back up the trail, Jake moved silently through the trees toward the remaining man. Charlie stood with his back to Jake, watching his partner disappear into the darkness. Jake closed the distance quickly, bringing the butt of Kate's pistol down hard on the back of the guard's head. The man dropped without a sound. Jake dragged him into the bushes and tied him with the man's own belt, gagging him with a torn piece of shirt. Up the trail, Jake could hear Kate's voice growing more frantic, leading the other guard further away. He retrieved his horse and moved quickly down to the main road, getting into position. 5 minutes later, Kate came running back, the guard close behind her. She led him right past where Jake was waiting. As the guard passed, Jake stepped out and pressed his rifle against the man's spine. Don't move. Don't make a sound. The guard froze. Kate spun around, her frightened expression replaced by cold calculation. She took her pistol back from Jake and pressed it against the guard's temple. Where's Brennan? She asked.
The guard's jaw clenched.
I'm not telling you anything. Kate cocked the pistol. I don't have time for this. Where is Brennan? The guard's resolve cracked. At the old mill. He's waiting there with 5 other men. Figured if you got past us, you'd head straight for town, and he'd catch you there. Kate and Jake exchanged glances. The mill was exactly where the note had said to meet. Blake wasn't bluffing. He'd set up a killing ground and was waiting for them to walk into it. How many men does Blake have in town? Jake asked. The guard swallowed hard. Maybe a dozen scattered around, watching the roads, the boarding house, the church. You can't get to whatever you're looking for. It's over. Jake hit the guard hard enough to knock him out, then tied him up beside his partner. Kate was already moving, heading down the trail toward town. We can't go to the mill, Jake said, catching up to her. It's exactly what they expect. Kate didn't slow down. That's why we're not going to the mill. We're going to do something Blake won't expect. She turned to look at him, her eyes bright with dangerous determination. We're going to walk right through the front door of his ranch and take what we need. Jake stopped in his tracks. That's insane. Blake's ranch is a fortress. She smiled, which is exactly why he won't expect us to hit it. While Brennan and his men are watching the mill in the town, Blake's sitting in his ranch with minimal security, thinking he's won. We go there, we find his records, we get proof of every illegal thing he's done, and we take it straight to the governor before anyone knows what happened. Jake wanted to argue, wanted to point out all the ways this plan could get them killed. But looking at Kate's determined face, he realized something. She'd been planning this from the start. The tests, the hiding, even getting caught by Blake's men was all part of pushing them toward this moment. "You used me again," he said quietly. Kate's smile faded. "I gave you chances to walk away. You chose to stay. Now we finish this together, or we don't finish it at all." She started walking again. Blake's ranch is 3 miles south. "We can be there in an hour if we move fast." Jake stood there for a moment, weighing his options. He could turn around, go back to his cabin, and hope Blake forgot about him, or he could follow this crazy woman into almost certain death and maybe, just maybe, come out the other side with something worth the risk. He jogged to catch up with her. "When this is over, you owe me more than just the truth. You owe me a damn good explanation for why you're willing to die for this." Kate glanced at him. "When this is over, cowboy, I'll owe you a lot more than that." They moved through the darkness together, 2 figures heading toward the lion's den while the lion's hunters waited in all the wrong places. The ranch appeared in the distance, lamplight glowing from the windows of the main house. Jake counted 4 guards visible from the road, probably more inside. Kate pulled out her pistol and checked the cylinder. "Ready?" she asked. Jake drew his own weapon. "As ready as I'll ever be for something this stupid." Kate laughed, a sound so unexpected it almost made him smile. That's the spirit. They approached the ranch from the east, using the barn and outbuildings for cover. A guard walked past, and Jake held his breath as the man came within 10 feet of their hiding spot. The guard paused, listening, then continued his patrol. Kate motioned for Jake to follow, and they slipped through the shadows toward the main house. The next 10 minutes would determine whether they lived or died, whether Kate's gamble paid off or got them both killed. Jake's heart pounded as they reached the back door of Blake's house, ready to step into the heart of enemy territory. The door was unlocked, which should have been their first warning. Jake pushed it open slowly, wincing at every creak of the hinges. Inside, the kitchen was dark and empty, dishes still sitting in the wash basin from dinner. Kate moved past him, her pistol raised, heading toward the hallway that led deeper into the house. They could hear voices from somewhere ahead, men talking and laughing. Blake was entertaining guests, which meant more witnesses but also more distraction. Kate paused at the hallway entrance, listening. The voices came from the study at the front of the house. She pointed to a door on the left. "Blake's office. That's where he keeps his records." They slipped into the office, and Kate immediately went to the large desk, pulling open drawers with practiced efficiency. Jake kept watch at the door, his gun trained on the hallway. "How do you know where everything is?" he whispered. Kate didn't look up from her search. "My brother worked here, remember? He told me the layout." She found a locked drawer and pulled a knife from her boot, working the lock with surprising skill. The drawer popped open, revealing stacks of ledgers and correspondence. Kate's eyes lit up as she flipped through the papers. Deeds, bills of sale, all fraudulent. Blake's been stealing land from homesteaders for years, forging documents and reselling it to Eastern investors. This is enough to hang him twice over. She stuffed the papers into a leather satchel she'd brought. "Now we just need to get out of here alive." They turned to leave and found Carson Blake standing in the doorway, a rifle pointed at Kate's chest. The legendary rancher was older than Jake expected, maybe 60, with silver hair and cold blue eyes that showed no surprise at finding intruders in his office. "Miss Sullivan," Blake said calmly, "I've been expecting you. Though I confess I didn't expect you to be quite this bold." His gaze shifted to Jake. "And you must be the mountain man Brennan was so curious about. Jake Rollins, isn't it?" Jake kept his gun steady, but Blake's rifle never wavered. "You're not going to shoot us," Kate said. "You need to know where the real map is." Blake smiled. "Actually, Miss Sullivan, I don't. You see, while my men were chasing you around the territory, I had other men searching your brother's old haunts. We found the church hiding spot yesterday. The real map is already in my possession." Kate's face went pale. "You're lying." Blake reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded paper, letting it fall open enough for them to see the detailed survey marks. "Your brother was very thorough. These mineral deposits will make me the richest man in 3 territories." He tucked the map back into his jacket. "The only question now is what to do with you both. I could kill you here, but that seems unnecessarily messy."
Or I could offer you a deal?
Jake's grip on his gun tightened. "What kind of deal?" "Walk away," Blake said simply. "Take whatever money you need and disappear. Go to California, Mexico, anywhere but here. I get to keep my map and my business. You get to keep your lives. Everyone wins." Kate laughed bitterly. "Except all the people you've robbed and killed. Except my brother who died trying to stop you." Blake's expression hardened. Your brother died because he was greedy and stupid. He could have taken my offer and lived. Instead, he tried to play games with a man who's been winning at this longer than he's been alive. Kate raised her pistol, pointing it directly at Blake. I'm not my brother. Blake's finger moved to the trigger of his rifle. No, you're just as stupid, but twice as stubborn. Do you really think you can outdraw me, girl? Even if you shoot me, my men will hear, and you'll never make it out of this house alive. Kate's hand didn't shake. Maybe not, but you'll be dead, and that's all that matters. For a long moment, nobody moved. Jake could feel the tension like a physical weight in the room. Then Jake did something that surprised everyone, including himself. He holstered his gun. Blake, he said, you're wrong about one thing. Kate's not alone in this. Blake's eyes flicked toward him. What are you doing? Kate hissed. Jake ignored her. You said you had the real map. You probably do. But those documents Kate just took from your desk, those are going to the territorial governor tomorrow morning, whether you kill us tonight or not. I've got a friend waiting at the edge of your property. If we don't come out in 30 minutes, he rides straight to the governor's office with copies of everything. Blake's confidence flickered for the first time. You're bluffing. Jake shrugged. Maybe. But are you willing to bet your empire on it? Those land fraud documents alone will get you 20 years in prison. The mineral rights you've been selling based on forged deeds, that's another 10. You kill us, you're just buying yourself a few hours before the law comes knocking. Blake's rifle lowered slightly and Jake saw the calculation in the old man's eyes. Kate caught on to what Jake was doing. Plus, she added, my brother wasn't the only one who knew about your crimes. There are 3 other people with copies of that map and affidavits detailing everything you've done. Kill us, and they all go public. You'll be finished either way. Blake studied them both. The rifle still pointed in their direction, but no longer quite so steady. You want a deal, he said finally. What are your terms? You destroy the map, Kate said. Give up the mineral rights. Stop the land fraud. And you pay restitution to every family you've stolen from. Blake laughed harshly. And in return? You live, Jake said. We walk out of here with those documents, but we don't file them with the governor. You clean up your act, make things right, and we all pretend this night never happened. Blake was quiet for a long time, weighing his options. Finally, he lowered the rifle completely. You drive a hard bargain, he said, but I'm a businessman and I know when I'm beaten. He walked to his desk and pulled out the map, holding it over the lamp flame. The paper caught fire and they all watched as the carefully drawn survey marks turned to ash. There, Blake said. My retirement fund. Gone. I hope you're satisfied. Kate kept her gun trained on him. The families you robbed, they get paid back. Every cent. Blake nodded slowly. It'll take time, but yes, they'll get their money. Jake moved toward the door, pulling Kate with him. We're leaving now. You make one move to follow us or send your men after us, and those documents go straight to the governor. Understood? Blake sank into his chair, suddenly looking every one of his 60 years. Get out of my house. They backed out of the office, through the kitchen, and into the night. Guards were still patrolling, but no alarm had been raised. They made it to the tree line before Kate finally let herself breathe. You were lying, she said as they hurried through the darkness.
About the friend waiting with copies of the documents.
Jake grinned, completely. You were too, he said. About the 3 other people with affidavits. Kate smiled back. Learned from the best. They walked in silence for a while, putting distance between themselves and Blake's ranch. Finally, Jake spoke. So was any of it real? The test, the trust, any of it? Kate stopped walking and turned to face him. The test was real. I needed to know if you'd crack under pressure, if you'd sell me out for money, but somewhere along the way it became more than that. She paused, choosing her words carefully. My brother's death, that was real. Blake's crimes, all real. But the part about not trusting anyone, about testing you to see if you'd betray me, that was only half true. The real truth is I was testing myself to see if I could still trust anyone after what happened to Danny. And? Jake asked. Can you? Kate stepped closer to him. Yeah. Cowboy. I think I can. She kissed him, quick and fierce, then pulled back. We should keep moving. Blake might change his mind once he realizes how thoroughly we bluffed him. Jake nodded, but his mind was racing. What about the documents? Do we really have enough to take him down if he doesn't keep his word? Kate patted the satchel. Every single fraudulent deed, every forged document, every piece of evidence we need. We give Blake 1 month to start making restitution. If he doesn't, we take this to the governor and let the law handle him. And if he comes after us in the meantime? Jake asked. Kate checked her pistol. Then we finish what we started tonight, but without the bluffing. They walked toward town as dawn began to break over the mountains, two unlikely partners who'd survived by trusting each other when neither had any reason to trust anyone. 3 weeks later, Jake sat on the porch of his cabin reading a newspaper. The headline reported that Carson Blake had announced his retirement from the ranching business and was liquidating his assets to settle outstanding debts with local homesteaders. No mention was made of stolen maps or midnight confrontations. Kate emerged from the cabin, 2 cups of coffee in her hands. She'd been staying with him while things cooled down, claiming it was safer than going back to town. Jake suspected she just enjoyed the quiet of the mountains. "Think he'll really follow through?" she asked, handing him a cup. Jake folded the newspaper. "He's smart enough to know we've got him cornered. Long as he keeps paying back what he stole, we keep our end of the bargain." Kate sat beside him, looking out at the view. "What happens when it's all over? When Blake's made his payments and we don't need to watch our backs anymore?" Jake sipped his coffee, considering. "I suppose you'll head back to your life, wherever that was before all this started." Kate was quiet for a moment. "I've been thinking about that. My old life doesn't really exist anymore. Blake saw to that when he killed Danny. Everything I had back there, it's all gone now." She turned to look at Jake. "I could start over somewhere new. Or I could stay here, help a certain cowboy run his mountain cabin, maybe learn to appreciate the quiet life." Jake felt his heart skip. That an offer or a threat? Kate smiled. "Bit of both, probably." "You willing to take that risk?" Jake thought about everything they'd been through, all the lies and tests and dangers. He thought about how she trusted him when she had no reason to, how he trusted her right back. "Sometimes the biggest risks bring the best rewards," he said. Kate settled against his shoulder, watching the sunrise over the mountains. "Then I guess we'll find out together, cowboy." They sat there in comfortable silence, 2 people who'd found each other in the worst circumstances and decided to make something good out of it. The mountains stretched out before them, peaceful and eternal, keeping their secrets as they always had. Whatever came next, they'd face it the same way they'd faced everything else, together and ready for whatever test came their way.